Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has filed paperwork for his long-anticipated bid for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination, offering himself up to GOP voters as an uncompromising conservative, yet still electable alternative to former President Trump as the party grapples with recent electoral disappointments. DeSantis, who filed with the Federal Election Commission on Wednesday, had been floated for years as a prospective presidential candidate, but his ambitions began to take on a more concentrated form over the past several months. He already has the backing of a well-funded super PAC, Never Back Down, as well as a vast war chest that can be transferred to a federal entity, though not directly to a campaign. In launching a White House bid, the Florida governor is hoping to sell himself to Republican voters as a low-drama winning substitute for Trump, a one-time political ally who has attacked DeSantis relentlessly in recent months over his presidential aspirations. Early polling in the nascent GOP presidential primary has shown DeSantis as the clearest threat to Trump's hopes of reclaiming the White House, though he's still running well behind the former president in most surveys. At the same time, his support has stagnated somewhat in recent weeks following a series of political setbacks and questions among some top Republicans about whether he has what it takes to compete on the national stage. Still, after 3 lackluster federal election cycles in a row for Republicans, DeSantis has captured the attention of many in his party who are ready to move on from Trump and his penchant for political drama. DeSantis is no less conservative or conflict-driven than Trump. His campaign announcement came on the heels of a whirlwind state legislative session that saw Florida lawmakers approve a laundry list of DeSantis' most polarizing policy priorities, including a 6-week abortion ban and a measure to allow Floridians to carry firearms without a permit. DeSantis' political rise has been rapid. When he first saw the governor's mansion in 2018, he was a relatively unknown congressman who flew expected to capture the GOP's gubernatorial nomination. It was Trump's endorsement that put him over the top and propelled him to a 20-point victory over his primary opponent, former state agriculture commissioner Adam Putnam. DeSantis ultimately won the general election that year by less than half a percentage point. Over the next 4 years, DeSantis transformed himself into a champion of the right, waging political wars against everything from COVID-19 lockdowns and restrictions to so-called wokeness, a broad term that the governor regularly uses to describe perceived liberal or progressive social attitudes. While that has made him a boogeyman among Democrats, it has endeared him to conservatives and helped reshape Florida's political landscape. The one-time swing state has now taken on a shade of red. DeSantis won a 19-point victory in his 2022 re-election bid, flipping Democratic strongholds like Miami-Dade and Palm Beach counties in the process. Republicans now hold supermajorities in both chambers of the state legislature, and for the first time since Reconstruction, there's not a single Democrat in statewide elected office. Jesus. But for all of DeSantis' political strengths, there are still some clearer challenges. Despite his rising star status among Republicans, much of the GOP's conservative voter base remains deeply loyal to Trump. At the same time, the former president has raked up a long list of endorsements from elected officials, a list that includes at least half of Florida's Republican congressional delegation. Trump isn't DeSantis' only competition for the Republican nomination. Several other candidates have already entered the race, including former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. Even if he's able to break Trump's hold in the Republican Party in 2024, the general election could also prove challenging for DeSantis, with even some Republicans questioning his hardline stance on issues like abortion, an issue that Democrats have used to rally their base with great success since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last year. Oh, that was quite the mouthful. So pretty much everybody predicted this was going to happen. Now, DeSantis, over the last several months, has, I think, really burned a lot of bridges, because when you're running for president, you're trying to, at the very least, win a general election. I guess I should say, at the very least, win the primary. But when you're trying to win a general election, you have to kind of moderate your message a little bit, or otherwise not do things that are deliberately alienating to regular people. And I do think him trying to call himself waging war on woke Disney and their movies, I think that stuff is going to disappoint or otherwise make it hard. Like, I'll just say this very clearly: whether Biden's the nominee for which most likely he will be, or it's Williamson, I don't see the Republicans winning the popular vote, and DeSantis is another part of that reason. A 6-week abortion ban. As we've explained before, most women at 6 weeks don't even know they're pregnant, so it basically is a full-on ban on abortion. And then, furthering access to firearms at a time of record mass shootings. It's all just stupid stuff. But it will endear him to Republican voters. Although I have to say, he's really, because the thing with people like Haley and Ramaswamy and Scott and Elder and the rest of them is that I'd say their biggest hurdle is that most voters don't know who they are. At least I would say most Republican voters. I think DeSantis has a higher name recognition than pretty much anyone that's in the race besides Trump. But one of the problems with higher name recognition is that it comes a lot of times with baggage. Um, and when you're becoming known for pretty much just throwing your finger up in the air and fighting against any type of COVID restrictions or trying to give people more access to guns and less access to reproductive health, I think you're going to find yourself alienating a lot of independents. But for the primary, I do believe he's going to have the easiest time trying to make up the gap between him and Trump because it's the smallest between the two of them. Although I will say it's really not that hard of a stretch to see where Trump can just keep piling it. Because I said my thing with DeSantis is that him, Haley, all the rest of them entering this race, except for maybe Christie, and we don't even know if he's going to jump in, but him and Pence might be the only exceptions. Their biggest weakness as a collective group is they are afraid to call out Trump. They're afraid of upsetting his voters by speaking disparagingly of him, and you just can't beat somebody in the primary if you're not willing to directly take them on. So Trump for months has been calling DeSantis the sanctimonious and the meatball name that was used for a little while. And what has DeSantis done to show his strength or to combat him? He's largely not said anything. He's tried to accuse Trump of hypocrisy, but directly hitting him is just not a thing he's willing to do. And it's not because Trump is this infallible, perfect candidate, because we've said before, DeSantis and anybody else could say, hey, look, we want to beat Biden. Let's not run the only person here that already lost to Biden. This is a guy who, during his budget proposals, tried to cut Social Security and Medicare, and now is trying to say that he won't. He's a flip-flopper. There's plenty of stuff to go after Trump over. But DeSantis is too scared, or at least currently has shown he's too afraid to risk burning bridges with the voters. And I just don't think someone who's too afraid to just tell the truth about the record of the person he's trying to beat has what it takes to either win the general election or to even be the Republican nominee. So maybe some people will get suckered into thinking that he's this strong, tough fighter who's an alternative to Trump, but I just don't see him being able to overcome him. And again, maybe now that he's actually officially in the race, he'll do something different. But as things currently stand, I think he's going to enter. I think he's going to get a brief surge in polls. There's going to be some people like, yeah, DeSantis is in. But as far as during the months before that first debate, and I think it might be in November, October. I don't even know if they've announced it yet, but there's going to be a debate at some point later this year. Whenever they do that first debate, and DeSantis is like very reluctant to say something about, because one of the things Trump has more than anybody else in this field, other than probably Elder, is he's charismatic. He's funny. People like listening to him speak. He's entertaining. DeSantis, it just talks about woke and is kind of this generic person who doesn't really say anything that's memorable or otherwise endearing to listen to. So his charisma is not really a thing, and I think that's going to play into why if he has to be on the debate stage with Trump, it's probably going to be a massacre for DeSantis. But we'll see how this plays out. I think if he were smart, he would attack Trump over the things that I've outlined, but he's not going to, because he's just as cowardly as the rest of these so-called political leaders.